money, but at the same time there is a little voice at the back of people's minds that is suggesting to them that there will also be bargains if they wait until the last minute. Habit is a significant factor in all this. You did this last year while you were taking down the Christmas decorations, and therefore without realizing it you will be doing exactly the same this year. You sit back in your favorite armchair and say, in 6 months' time I shall be sitting on a sunny beach somewhere and I shall be reading my favorite book. The Marvels did not believe in leaving things to chance. They believed in planning. On a winter evening around mid-January in the Marvel household, the following would be a typical conversation. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Daisy? I'll tell you what I'm thinking. I'm dreaming of my summer holiday at the moment in a lovely warm place, and she was being very romantic when she called him and this was Daisy's sense of humor. Where will you be taking your holiday this summer? I was thinking perhaps we might try Majorca. It's said to be very pretty. At this stage of the conversation there would be the sound of screams of laughter, and the following day Andrew usually booked the holiday. The next-door neighbors, the long-suffering Nortons, heard the laughter too, turned to each other and said, they're obviously making arrangements to go to Majorca again. When Andrew finished work that Monday and was walking down the high street to the station to get his train home, he decided to call in at the travel agents to make his booking. When he reached the door, it didn't seem to open in the usual manner. In fact, to his surprise, it opened outwards instead of inwards. He ought to know, he'd been pushing and not pulling it several times a year over the last 25, and he usually went to young Jack, now old Jack, who'd been working there over the same period of time. The layout was different too. Something strange was happening, and poor Andrew couldn't make it out. There was the smell of damp and hot hair. Can I help you, sir? Asked a young woman in a white overall. I've been coming here for the last 20. Andrew's jaw dropped. For a moment he thought he was standing in the wrong shop, dashed outside, and then came back in again. Maybe he was dreaming, but then it dawned on him, the travel agents had gone and been replaced by a hairdresser's. The woman explained, we opened last week and are opening another new premises by the park next month. The travel agents have been experiencing a difficult time this year. They weren't getting their regular customers. Andrew just couldn't handle it. If Daisy were here, she would be feeling the same. He tried to picture how he would be explaining it to her. What would she be doing right now at home? She would probably be preparing the supper and expecting to see the receipt for the booking as he came through the door. What could he do? He was in a hairdressing salon, and it was a unisex one as well. He didn't know what to do, where to look. When Andrew eventually reached home about 2 hours later, Daisy was speaking on the phone. She had been going frantic trying to find out what had happened to Andrew. As she was watching him come through the door, she couldn't believe it was him. He looked about 20 years younger. Apparently he had been persuaded to stay on at the salon and have his hair done. He had seriously been considering having something done for some time, and the young woman in the white overall had convinced him that he should experience all the facilities on offer. It wasn't long after that when Daisy gave the salon a try too. Within 3 months Andrew and Daisy had become very important customers. It wasn't cheap, of course, but both their heads were immaculate, and they were enjoying the appreciative comments from friends and colleagues, including of course the postman, the dustman, and the next-door neighbors. Normally at this time of year, they would have been saving hard and putting money aside for the holiday in Majorca, but that topic was not being discussed at the moment. As the weeks went by, they both became very friendly with the young woman in white called Angela, and on one of their regular visits she told them, I'm running a raffle to mark our first 100 days at the salon. That's how long we'll have been doing business by the end of this weekend. I was wondering whether you would like to buy some tickets. Anxious to keep in favor, they paid up, bought 6 tickets and got no more about it. About a month later, when they arrived at the salon, Angela was waiting for them at the door, excitedly waving an envelope. They've just been doing the draw and you've won first prize. As Daisy was casually opening the envelope, she half expected to have won a set of hairbrushes or a bottle of champagne. As she read the note, a strange smile was beginning to cross her face. We're going on holiday, and oh, yes, that's nice, dear. And where are we going? Somewhere called Majorca, dear. Ah, Well, said, and that'll keep the postman, the dustman and the neighbors happy. 6. Passive voice or haunted. In this story you will see many examples of how the passive voice can be used. Here is the structure of the passive voice. Subject plus auxiliary verb be plus main verb past participle. Sometimes a modal verb can be used before the auxiliary verb. Subject plus modal verb, could plus auxiliary verb be plus main verb past participle. We use the passive when we want to make the active object more important. We do not know the active subject. Now read the short story and try to work out what the constructions in italics mean. Haunted. The house was built in the middle of the 18th century and some signs could still be found that it had once been a famous meeting place for people who liked playing card games. By the time it was bought by my aunt and uncle some 200 years later, it had been owned by a long list of different people whose names are recorded on the title deeds. As it is situated by the sea, it became a favorite place for various members of the family to visit. It also had an added attraction: it was haunted, at least so my uncle said. To this day, of course, it never had been proved. The story, according to my uncle, was that at certain times of the day, incidentally at all times when the house was only occupied by him, a small figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs in the shape of an old lady and held firmly in her hands what appeared to be a walking stick. She waited a moment, looked up the stairs, climbed a few steps to check, as if she was being watched, and then suddenly she could no longer be seen. At this stage in the story it must be pointed out that my uncle was a man blessed with a vivid imagination. Once he even convinced his wife shortly after they got married that he was hypnotized when they visited the theater. This turned out to be his excuse for falling asleep. Because he was bored? She could not be persuaded. But he was quite definite about the little old lady. You just wait, he used to say, till you see her. Then you will be convinced. The trouble with the younger generation is that they refuse to believe anything unless it is presented to them on a plate. He claimed that he was endowed with special psychic powers because he was the seventh son of a seventh son. That was a fact that couldn't be disputed. Personally, I didn't believe a word about this so-called ghost. But then when you are invited to someone's house, you have to be polite.